Today, we're going to be helping our friends at Gratsi to make $10,000 in 10 minutes time. Pat from Intergrowth here. We're back with our latest e-commerce SEO and AEO audit series where we audit e-commerce websites and help them to identify actionable things that they can do to make a lot more money from traditional search engines like Google and large language models. Today, we're helping out our friends over at Gratsi. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to jump in and show them exactly how to make a lot more money. So let's start out with an overview here. Gratsi ultimately sells what I would describe as higher end boxed wine. So with that, we're going to start out looking at one of my favorite SEO and AEO opportunities, which is looking at broken backlinks. In essence, identifying any sort of websites on the internet that are linking to pages, in this case on the Gratsi website, that no longer exist. So if we hop over to Ahrefs and we look at the Gratsi website, we can see there are 24 different web pages on the internet that are linking to a page on the Gratsi website that doesn't exist. In many cases, there's going to be some low quality links that come up in the mix, but we can see there are some really reputable websites coming up in here that ultimately are just being lost in the void in terms of SEO and AEO value. So we have a couple links coming in from BuzzFeed. We have Elite Daily in the mix as well. So there are some really great links that Gratsi can recover strictly by either republishing these pages that no longer exist or just redirecting these users to a more appropriate page. So Austin, one thing I would recommend, you guys have a few pages like the wine variety pack. There was the wine sampler. A lot of these pages still exist on the website. These are probably just cases where the URL structure changed over time. A huge opportunity to go through, just set up these redirects in Shopify. It's going to get you a lot more SEO equity in, I would say, 5 minutes of time. Second thing that really stood out to us is when we look at the Gratsi website, and for context listeners, we're using third-party tools for this analysis. Specifically here, we're using a tool called Ahrefs. This is not first-party data. We don't have access to Gratsi's Google Analytics, Shopify Analytics, you name it. So all this is going to operate on some degree of assumptions. But one of the assumptions we can make in here is that almost all of the traffic coming to the Gratsi website is coming from people who already know about Gratsi and are searching for Gratsi by name, or two, people who are looking for specific recipes, which Gratsi ranks really well for in traditional search engines. We can see, for example, right here, their homepage is estimated to get like 40+% of their organic search traffic. If we look at the organic keywords they rank for, we can see outside of a handful of different recipe-related keywords or siesta, almost all of their search traffic for probably the first 20, 30 keywords in here that are driving the most traffic to them are Gratsi terms. So we can see Gratsi wine, where to buy, Gratsi wine near me. It's amazing that you guys have so much branded search traffic coming to you. It speaks volumes to the quality of the brand and how much people actively seek this out. The opportunity, though, is to leverage that brand equity for a lot of these non-branded searches. So you start showing up in traditional search engines and large language models when people aren't actively searching for you by name. So within that, one opportunity that is going to blend two overarching opportunities together, I love running what I refer to as query fan-out analysis whenever we see scenarios like this. Query fan-out is ultimately a process where we look at what are the specific search parameters that LLMs like ChatGPT or Claude are pulling in when they're trying to collect information to inform a user query. So what I did is I just exported this to a Google Sheet for ease of access. But what we specifically did is we ran query fan-out analysis to see what are the types of search queries that are regularly coming up in the mix to inform these answers when we search for the concept of what's the best red box wine in the US, a theme that is going to be really central to the Gratsi brand. What we see in here is a breakdown of all sorts of different queries that are searched for by LLMs in order to pull in the specific answers for users and the specific products that they're actually going to recommend. Now, I highlighted a couple in here that strike me as a great way to kill two birds with one stone. A minute ago, we were saying that there's huge opportunity to start ranking in Google for a lot of these non-branded search terms. So start ranking in Google for wine-related search terms outside of something that includes the Gratsi brand name. Highlighted a few in here that would be exceptional educational content opportunities. For example, is box wine lower quality than bottled wine? Writing an educational article speaking to the difference in quality, speaking to the longevity of box wine versus bottled wine, writing about the eco-friendly benefits of box wine, And then in here, we get into the comparison content angle, where these would be phenomenal opportunities for Gratsi to write a blog article comparing Franzia versus Vella Box Wine and adding themselves into the mix, highlighting what they do better, what they do worse. This is going to ultimately serve a dual purpose. One, these are the types of queries that users are actively searching for. These are the things that users want information on. Ranking and writing long form content about these themes is going to get a lot more traffic to the website from traditional search engines like Google. Second thing that comes into the mix is if we can start ranking on traditional search engines for these types of queries, these types of queries are the ones that LLMs are looking for information about when a user asks them this exact question about red wine that's boxed in the US. So if we start ranking in here for these types of queries in traditional search engines, we're going to see a massive correlational connection where we're going to see far more LLM visibility. And since we're the ones writing these articles, that visibility is going to be very favorable for us. So we gain this ability to better control the conversation within these LLM discussions and also get way more traffic from traditional search engines like Google. So guys, would definitely recommend start out, write these 5 blog articles. These should be one of the first things in your content pipeline. I'd recommend also run this query fan out analysis or reach out to us. We'll run this for you for some of the other wines that you have. Run it for the rosé wine, run it for the white wine that you guys have as well. These are all golden opportunities for you. The next thing I want to jump into is what I refer to as LLM sentiment analysis. This is ultimately a process where we ask various LLMs to share their perception on a particular brand. So for example, we did this for Claude. We also did this for ChatGPT. I'll share my screen here so we can get a look at this. Overarching theme that we look for is something like, what's your perception of, in this case, Gratsi? So the consistent trend that we'll see is that LLMs do a really good job in this current environment of pulling in some pros and some cons and an overall breakdown of when they recommend you, when they don't recommend you. So we see they start out with all these positive things about Gratsi, and then they bring in the criticism. The criticism is where I'd recommend spending the most time. Particularly, 2 things stood out to us when we looked at what does Claude say about you and what does ChatGPT say about you. First thing is that we see that this website, Thing Testing, which candidly I had never heard of until I ran this search, Thing Testing is being very heavily cited when we run this particular Claude prompt. So my recommendation is pull up this Thing Testing website. We have it right in, here we go. And we could see you guys have great reviews, 4.6 stars. There were 40 reviews in the mix as well. One, I would look at any of these negative reviews and look to respond to these individuals who left these negative reviews. 2, I would really push to continue building this average review rating with even more positive reviews. 4.6 is an exceptional starting point, but seeing that Claude is heavily citing this source tells me that this is a golden opportunity, and this is arguably weighted more heavily than a lot of the other more reputable review platforms out there. So highly recommend push to get a bunch more reviews on this platform. That's going to work wonders for the brand. Second thing that comes into the mix, I'm going to pull up that Claude prompt again in here, is we have this one article from The Great Pursuit, which appears to me to be like an affiliate review type website. This apparently left a very negative review about the brand. Their concern was that the product was shipped from Texas, something about your grapes coming from Washington, frustration with no customer service line. But when we look at this specific review that's coming up in the mix right here, we see this review. Oh, there we go. We see this review is like a year old at this point. So my recommendation is reach out to the owner of this site or any contact info you can find, do a little bit of damage control, play a little bit of customer service. I don't know what that pop-up is. Here we go. So my recommendation would be reach out to this brand, see if you can do some damage control, see if there's any way that you can get them to update their review. This is being heavily cited, at least by Claude, when I look into it right now. So great opportunity to look into this, see what you can do to alleviate the situation. It's being cited right now. Assuming it continues being cited in the future, it's a golden opportunity for you. So from there, one final opportunity that we're going to look at today. And this is looking at the ChatGPT side of things. So as I mentioned, we ran the same LLM sentiment analysis here. ChatGPT gives you guys an 8.5 out of 10. Very, very positive things that ChatGPT is perceiving about it. The follow-up opportunity that strikes me in here, specifically with ChatGPT, but it's going to help in all LLMs, is I started by asking, what are the sort of follow-up questions that I, as a hypothetical customer, should be asking a Gratsi sales rep before I make a purchase? Yes, I realize that's overkill. It doesn't make sense for someone to hop on a phone call with your sales rep to buy one box of wine. The reason I like to see this is going to show us the holes in ChatGPT's understanding of your brand. And really, I would say in one of two fronts. One is there's going to be a scenario where this information that ChatGPT flags is not available anywhere on the internet. And in some cases, maybe you don't want it to be available, but you should be aware which of this information is available, which isn't. Second opportunity that's going to come within it is in many of these cases, you might find there are some questions in here that you've actually written an FAQ page about, or you have it included in your FAQs somewhere on your site. But if ChatGPT is struggling to find that information, it's not easily discoverable. And it's a huge opportunity to make that specific piece of text or that specific page more easily accessible. So I ran through this and there were a few things that jumped out. We had one who actually makes the wine. So this is something that ChatGPT struggled to pull in. They found some information about coming from hand-selected vineyards throughout Europe, some wines from France and Italy. But if you wanted to expand upon this, great opportunity to talk about what's the winery or wineries that you get your grapes from, who's the producer, the winemaker, whether it's custom made for Gratsi or from an existing sourcing provider. Does the blend change from year to year? So this could be a really interesting one to dive into as well. Whether you continue to use the same blend every year, whether it does get modified over time, how are the vineyards selected? So what does that vetting process look like? What does low sulfites actually mean for the Gratsi brand? And a handful of others. But these are all phenomenal opportunities, again, to at least review as a team and determine, do you want this to be public-facing material? Or would you rather just keep it as is and not have these be data points that you're really talking about heavily? All right, listeners. So that's all we had for today. Gratsi team, hope you find this helpful. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this. Listeners, if you want us to take a look at your website next, email us audits@intergrowth.com. Once again, that's audits@intergrowth.com. And we'll see you next time.